Welcome back to our lessons on Hebrew poetry. We're going to be getting into the book of Psalms a little bit more today and just sort of the importance of this book. So maybe you've seen one of these before where it's like a little Bible, real thin one, and it'll just say the New Testament. There's almost always one other book that this includes, and that's the book of Psalms. So why would, out of all the books in the Old Testament, if you were to include like all the New Testament, that's all important, right? Keep Matthew through Revelation. But why out of all the Old Testament books would somebody select Psalms? Well, they've been important for Christians since the beginning. These words, these beautiful poems and songs have been a source of comfort in times of trouble, right? A source of strength whenever we feel weak, a source of hope when we feel hopeless. And so, yeah, they may have been the words of David originally or somebody else, but they become sort of our words because we can identify and kind of resonate with what David was going through maybe at a time in his life. Now, you're going to see that most of the Psalms, when you look at them before you read the chapter, it'll have a title at the top. Sometimes it gives you instructions. It'll say maybe the Psalm of David. Now, David actually only writes about maybe 50% roughly or so of the Psalms. They're not all by him. It's not the Psalms of David. These are Psalms by a bunch of different people. Some of them are by Solomon. Some of them are by Hezekiah, who was a king about 250 years after the life of David. And some of them are anonymous. We don't know who they are. But they are a collection of 150 chapters of Psalms, which is crazy. Some are long, some are really short. But as I said, you're going to see a caption. So sometimes it'll say who wrote the psalm, and then it'll say instructions, because it's an actual song, right? S-O-N-G, meant to be played. It'll say things like, oh, play this with the harp or the lyre. Like, anybody know how to play the lyre anymore? And so we know a little bit about David. He played a harp, right? That was his instrument. As a shepherd, he would use that to calm his sheep and so on. Later on, under Saul, King Saul, when he was going crazy and possessed, right? David would be summoned to play the harp for him, and it would calm his soul, it said. And so sometimes you'll see a little instruction there of what that was meant for. Now, what's unfortunate with the Psalms is that we don't have like the sheet music, right? So if you're a musician, you need those notes to know how to play your song, right? We don't have those notes. So we don't know how it was played. We don't know what the melody was like. And so we have to speculate of what that was like. But what's kind of cool though too is people throughout Christian history have taken these psalms and have been inspired to write modern day songs. They put their own melody. And so it gives an opportunity for us to reimagine these words and apply them differently to our modern context. The next section here is going to be on the different types of psalms. There's not just one type of psalm. When you open up the book, you'll see that, as I said, some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Now, the main type of psalms is known as a hymn, right? I grew up in a church where we sung hymns, right? There was an organist even, right? Maybe some of you have a church like that. That's not quite what we mean by hymns. Hymn usually has a call to the community for response. These hymns were not meant just for one person. It was meant for a people to respond. And so in the church I grew up, when we sang hymns, it wasn't just one person stood up and sung that hymn. We all stood up together as a whole congregation and sang them. So when you think of hymns, think of that. It's meant for a group of people. It's meant for people to worship together. So it'll say something like, I call on you, all of Israel, to praise our God. It'll have those pronouns of our and we and so on when we talk about hymns for Hebrew poetry. One of the things that Psalms is known for too is it's not just praises. Sometimes when we think of Psalms, we think of these are a bunch of praises, but 1/3 of them are laments, right? A lament is a cry out to God for help in times of need. Right? We see this all throughout the Bible. Go back to Exodus. The people are enslaved in Egypt, and they're crying out to God for help. They're lamenting, and God hears their cry, and God responds to them. And so somebody like David or any other psalm writer, when they write a lament, they're confident to know that God actually hears the cries of their heart. And that's what lament is. It's not just whining, right? It's not just saying, God, life's unfair, life doesn't, life is worthless, and a kind of a stomping of the feet, childish, folding of the arms, and no, right? It's a confidence that God hears us when we are sad, when we're crying out to God, when we're times of distress, when we're suffering, that God also responds to us, that there's a hope. And so the Psalms give us confidence in saying, you know what, we don't just bottle it up when we're going through something. We actually tell God how we feel, and God listens, and God cares. And so 1/3 of the Psalms are laments. All right, that's going to cover it for right now. In the next video, we're going to talk about more types of Psalms. There's quite a few different types, but for right now, that's where we're going to stop. 150 Psalms, there's a lot to get through. All right, and the last thing I'll let you know before we leave is that as we see the progress of the Psalms go, that we see more laments in the first part of the book than we see at the end. And we see more praises at the end than we see at the beginning. It's almost as if this is how life is. Somebody who journeys with God all their life, there are things that they're struggling with in those early years to say, I need God to respond to this. There's laments. But as we continue to journey with God, the hope is that there are more praises and more things to rejoice about because our vision, our understanding of God, our faith is stronger, it's clearer. And so the Psalms, all 150 of them, give us a good perspective of what it means to continue to pursue God in our life of faith. All right, that's going to do it for now, and until next time.